Today on Doomed, we're talking Zoom on Doomed. Tonight on the show, we have Jack Morse, a security and privacy tech reporter, to discuss all the issues going on with Zoom, that video teleconferencing app that, if you're not currently using, you've certainly heard about before. This thing has taken practically the world by storm because of the coronavirus pandemic and people being hunkered down in their homes. An app that keeps everyone connected while we're all stuck inside? Sounds good, right? Well, not so much. Let's get right to it and start talking about why Zoom can really suck, to be quite frank. Let me pull him up on the screen here. There we go. Let me give him an introduction now that he's on screen. Jack Morse, tech reporter focusing on cybersecurity and privacy at Mashable. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I just want to say, Mashable, I haven't heard of that place before. What is that? What is that company? What do they do?
Yeah, I believe they cover, tech and culture.
Right. I think I'm familiar. I think I've heard of that place before. Oh, right. You're my coworker. Right.
Yeah. To get that out of the way, we have the pleasure of working together.
Right. Well, the pleasure is mine, I should say. I'm a little. People notice I'm running a little bit late today. A little bit flustered. The kids would not go to bed tonight.
It's almost like the pandemic can throw off everyone's schedules, including children's.
Right. And speaking of schedules being thrown off, I feel like with everyone hunkered down at home, tech has tried to step in and keep everyone connected, keep everyone receiving their food and their whatever else they need at grocery stores or places like, a Rite Aid or a Target or whatever, your basic necessities. And, we're going to focus on Zoom today, but there's a few companies I wanted to bring up to sort of get us to Zoom. And that's because as we depend on these tech companies to sort of help fill the role, whether it be connecting each other online or providing us with the ability to get this sort of this food and other necessities delivered to us, a lot of them are dropping the ball in terms of just basic humanity, in terms of how they're treating the small businesses and the workers who keep them running, to be quite honest. I mean, we've already seen the Amazon strikes that are popping up across the country. We've seen that small businesses like local owned takeout places and restaurants. I'm not sure how widespread this is, but I've seen flyers they tuck in with their deliveries now. So when a Seamless driver or an Uber Eats driver drops off your stuff, you get this little flyer that says, "Hey, I'm glad you discovered us on these companies, but we should let you know they take a shit ton of the percentage of what you pay us. So please, now that you know we exist, it would be quite helpful to us if you just order from us directly now." And then also you have companies like Instacart who, treat their workers as independent contractors. And then I've seen this story where apparently people are tipping Instacart workers a ton of money in the app up front, which you can do. And apparently, I've never used these services before because I'm anti this whole gig economy stuff. It apparently bumps up your order because the Instacart worker wants to deliver it to you and provide a better service to you to make sure they get that good tip. And then after they deliver your toilet paper expediently, people then go in and change that tip to 0, which is incredible that they allow you to do that. So that independent contractor just busted his ass for you, and you're giving him shit in return.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Yeah, that specifically I've seen as well. I think the example I saw was people were promising a tip of larger than $50, and then Instacart allows you, I believe it's 3 days to alter your tip after the completion of the delivery. So somebody says, okay, I can prioritize deliveries based on tips because it's not like my per delivery fee is very high, payment from Instacart. And then, unscrupulous and frankly immoral people are, then removing that tip after the fact. Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Right. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because these companies, I feel like, like those restaurants and takeout places said, you could order from them directly. There's ways you don't need to use these services, people. I mean, some folks might have to if they live in like a food desert and they don't have a car and they don't want to take public transportation. I get that. But for the most part, if you're just using these services because you are too lazy to pick up the phone, please pick up the phone and order directly from your local small businesses.
Right. And I would just say that, yeah, if you have the ability to pick up and place a phone call, some people, there are some accessibility issues there, but if you have that ability, then by calling the restaurant directly and by pulling their number off of their webpage, not through, Yelp's webpage or something, then those restaurants aren't paying that huge commission to companies like DoorDash or whatever. So more of your money is supporting your local restaurant, the people living and working in your community, and all you have to do is pick up the phone.
Right. I mean, it's shocking to me when this first started, and I know this is not we're not sticking with these companies for the show, but I just got to get it out.
That's right. Well, hey, I'm an opinionated person, so.
Right. I just remember so well that when this really first started and people really had no idea what to expect, and then about a week in when it started to get like sort of like, okay, this is what we're gonna have to do. So like things are gonna change. This is like a life-altering event for pretty much everyone across the world. Seamless came out with this, and Seamless is owned by Grubhub, who owns like Menu Pages and all these other companies. They put out this statement saying, like, oh, to the small businesses out there who use our service, don't worry, we'll take care of you. Your payment will be deferred. And I just could not, like, just to let people know, they're not lowering their commission. I get if, what would be really nice. I mean, this is a very, this company made a ton of money off of small businesses who probably don't even make a low single, like a point something percentage of what they make off the backs of these small businesses who do that. Here's a company that could have said, for the time being, we will take no percentage of we'll take no commission, or have the commission, or lowered it to like something nominal just to keep things going, like 1-2%. They decided to just say, we'll defer the payment. Basically, if you can't pay us right now, when you come back to work or when things are back to normal, we're expecting you to start paying us all that money back. Like, we're not letting you off the hook.
Yeah. Yeah, in the mayor. So I'm based in the West Coast. I'm living and reporting from San Francisco. And the mayor of San Francisco recently announced that I think this was late last week, but don't quote me on that one. That they were capping, I believe it was commissions at 15% for companies like DoorDash. And it was funny because I think the day before, DoorDash announced that they had planned to do something like this. And obviously they had been in conversation. Now, I don't know this. I'm just saying it looks to be obvious. They had been in conversation with the mayor's office and knew this was coming. But so it seems like when, those ideas that you were talking about, Matt, when those do happen, when people talk about reducing the commission, it's because, local officials sort of force their hand. They back them into a corner. Yeah, because people are annoyed and frustrated and angered at those practices.
Right. We had that idea the whole time. We were just gonna do that.
Yeah, what weird timing.
Damn, butterscotch. Yeah. So you mentioned you're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. The wonderful world of the internet enables us to be coworkers. Yet, for the past 2 years now, I've been here almost 2 years now, and you've been here before me. For the past 2 years working together at Mashable, we have never met each other.
Never met in person.
Right.
It's wild.
Right. And the reason we could do that is because of wonderful technologies like video teleconferencing software and apps and platforms. And since this whole pandemic, one specific service has somehow risen to the top and has become synonymous with that whole niche, that industry, in the same way Facebook is synonymous with social networking, Twitter is synonymous with up-to-the-date real-time posting, Instagram is synonymous with photos. YouTube with videos. The list goes on. Zoom has somehow become that service, and it's incredible to see.
It's become essentially a verb. You would say, I'm Googling something, right? To
Right.
imply or to let someone know that you're looking up this piece of information. I think we're in the early stages still, but it's become a verb in the sense that it's like, oh, I'm Zooming with my colleagues, or I'm Zooming with my grandparents, or my cousins, or, whoever else that you'd like to speak with and see, but you can't because we're all sheltered in place.
Right.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing to me is there are so many, you know, big established companies. And listen, obviously, on this show, I talk very much about the issues with major corporations. But there are certain things that major corporations, when it comes to this sector, when their success is so tied in to the user experience
Right.
that they are beholden to the users. It is weird to me that these services drop the ball. Like, Google has Google Hangout. Microsoft owns what we're using right now. I use Skype to run my connect with my guests on this show because the software I use to stream has a Skype integration directly. But Zoom somehow skipped over these companies.
Yeah, it's wild. And the story of why exactly that happened, I don't think has been told or written yet. I will say it is surprising. I mean, Zoom was founded in, I believe, in 2011. It's a San Jose company, and their product was originally designed as an enterprise product, meaning, this is companies and people within companies to video conference with each other. So the CEO or some accountant has a meeting with somebody across the country, right? Not mom and pops or, friends or whoever trying to have a cocktail during a pandemic. So their product was designed with the former use case, not the latter use case. I think part of the reason that it has taken off in such a way is it's kind of really easy to use. It's platform agnostic, and by that I mean you don't have to have a Facebook account, you don't have to own a Mac product, you don't have to have a Google account, though some of that I believe might be changing or have changed. But so why exactly Zoom is the one? Who knows? Frankly, I think some of those things that I just mentioned certainly helped it, but it's definitely a surprise, and it definitely caught Zoom by surprise. The CEO, Eric Wan, I believe is his name, just did an interview with the New York Times last week, I want to say, but it was definitely in April of this year. And he was talking about, the security issues, which we're going to get into. But, he himself expressed surprise at Zoom's popularity. He himself expressed surprise that Zoom had become the tool of the moment. And I think that if the CEO of the company can't see, their own product taking off in such a way, it's definitely a surprise to us as well. Or it makes sense why it's a surprise to us as well.
Right. I mean, doing podcasting for geez, close to a decade now. I remember, I've always heard people say, other podcasts, I use Zoom to record my podcast. And I was always thinking, like, why are you doing that? I mean, there's so much,
Sure.
so many easier ways to do it. Like, Zoom is not meant for that. Primarily, it's an enterprise level application. It was meant to connect businesses with other businesses, or in our case, a business with their staffers or employees across the globe. It was meant for that sort of internal use case. It wasn't meant for a customer to customer or family to friend or friend to family, family to family. And it just, I mean, I guess the CEO said it himself too, but it just baffles me that this company has done this. Because let's get to these issues, because this is why it matters.
There are a lot.
This is why it matters. Now, you actually wrote one of the earliest pieces I saw, certainly the first for Mashable since the pandemic started, but easily one of the first pieces I saw that broke down the security issues with Zoom from the very beginning. And more obviously have come out since you wrote this piece.
Sure.
But let's start there. So early March, I would say this is when we started at Mashable, started to work from home. It might have been like the first day they told us to work from home. But the rest of the country wasn't working from home yet. You got into this piece about the privacy issues with Zoom.
Yeah, well, I will say that, part of the thing that I write about and that I think about a lot is privacy. It's one of the main beats that I cover, and I think a lot about the way that we often just and again, not everyone, but a lot of people who have desk jobs or work with computers or interact with technology, which is a lot of people. The amount of privacy and information that we give away simply by using these work mandated tools. So, like Slack, for example, is something that a lot of media companies use. Mashable is one of them. It's a communications tool. And Slack's actually a pretty good company privacy wise, more or less. They have a lot of problems. So, but, like I've spent a lot of time digging into, the privacy implications of this. Like I've written a lot about how, if you take a work device home, you basically don't have, like, your boss, your employer can legally turn the camera on in your home, turn the mic on in your home, anything you do on your work computer, even in your home, your boss has the ability to read. So I'm always thinking about these things. And I'm writing about these things, and they matter to me, and I know they matter to other people too. So I guess that's the setup with Zoom. And, it's this company that offers a free version of its product. This is.
Uh-oh. You froze there, Jack. I'm going to have to recall.
This product.
You froze there. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Just take us back to, right when you started. Zoom's a free product.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Skype has been given. Everyone's using the internet right now, man. Like the whole world is practically online because everyone's home.
Well, I was just saying, Zoom. They've changed this, but they initially started as everyone got 45 minutes for free, right? So all these people are discovering this product, and their friends are saying, "Hey, Zoom with me," whatever. But a lot of people are unfamiliar with it. And because, as we were talking about earlier in this conversation, it was designed as more of an enterprise product. There's a lot of weird enterprise tools in there, meaning these are things that your boss might want to keep tabs on you, right? And again, this is sort of, I look at a lot of these products like this. It's like, who is the person using this, and where does the power lie in that dynamic? And the person who has the power, how would they want to use this to control their employees, right? So with Zoom, there was one thing that really stood out to me, which is called attendee attention tracking. And what this is so you're in a Zoom meeting, your boss is hosting the meeting. They can tell there's a feature that enables them to tell if you stop paying attention, essentially. So, while your boss is lecturing you about your poor performance or your colleague's great performance or, whatever, if your boss or your company or your CEO is droning on and you stop paying attention and tab over to the other window, after 30 seconds, it can alert the meeting host that you've stopped paying attention, right? And, this is something that probably, a lot of people would say, oh, well, of course, the company is tracking you, of course, whatever. But it's like most people don't think about that stuff.
Right.
Most people aren't really thinking that, hey, if I stop, even if I have the window on my screen, but I click on another one, that my boss is going to know. That's just one example. I was going through all their privacy policy stuff, and they have a frequently asked questions page, right? So it's their attempt to break down the legalese of the privacy policy to where someone, the lay person can understand it. And I get to this section that's about what Zoom does with your data. And the question is, does Zoom sell my data? And the literal response is by Zoom depends on what you mean by sell. Or I think it depends what you mean by sell is the direct quote. And then they go into some explanation about how they might give your data to third parties, and some people under certain conditions might consider this a sale, blah, 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 blah. So these are just some of those early flagging issues. It's what is Zoom doing with your data? Well, it's not exactly clear. And what sort of privacy do you maintain and do you have when you're forced to use this for work, or when you decide to use it, in your personal life to communicate with friends, family, loved ones that you're now separated with. Yeah. So I wrote about that.
Right. No, that is incredible though. I guess it's almost not surprising because obviously as someone who works in covering this sort of stuff and also very, compared to most people, very tech savvy like yourself, it's not surprising, but it's still surprising because the idea that these companies are tracking you in some way is, it always is like, well, duh, but also like, man, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, and the well, duh attitude is not helpful. It's condescending. It's
right.
It's people. it's people who don't spend their entire lives thinking about this stuff, which is fine. There's lots of things I don't spend my entire life thinking about, right? And if I'm interested in it or I learn something new, the thing is not to tell me, well, duh, idiot. The thing to say is, yes, this is what's happening. If you'd like more information, here it is, So, I have these conversations with friends who are, my age, my peers. I have it with older family members. I try to communicate this stuff to them in a helpful way that hopefully is not condescending, hopefully is valuable to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people who aren't like you were just talking about your friends and many people I know, my friends, my family members especially, I'm sure that's with everybody. These things that may be obvious to you or me or other tech savvy people are not obvious to them. And like you said too, everyone's got their specialties. Everyone has something they know better than someone else.
And I would say a great example of that is, early on, I spent probably too long doing this, but when Zoom was sort of popping off in March, and I'd written this article and I was like, well, how, this is such a weird system because there's a meeting ID, which is like a 9 to 11 digit. And so now I'm getting in the nitty gritty, sorry, but This is important, I promise. So if you haven't used Zoom, there was this thing called a meeting ID. There still is. It's a 9 to 11 digit number that you would send, to your friend or your colleague or whoever, and you'd say, plug this in. And it's basically the equivalent of, like a phone number for like a party call, right? So you plug this in and then you can dial into our meeting. Right. Now, there's the option to set a password on that, but this is back in March, right? But it was buried somewhere in the settings, which meant that if you had this meeting ID, pretty much anyone could get in the meeting. Now, people are you can do a Google search. There's like a prefix, like a string. There's for the links to the Zoom meetings. It's like really common. It's really easy. You just look at a Zoom meeting and say, what is the first, how are all these set up? Or the URL for the Zoom meetings, right? And you can just search on Google, you can search on Facebook, you can search Trello boards, which is like a task organizing tool, which is often open to the public. And you can just see all these Zoom meetings. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess I can drop into Zoom meetings if I want, random people's Zoom meetings. But, I'm not like a troll or like a Discord, troll Zoom bomber, which is something we'll talk about later. So I didn't really initially grasp the possibility for harassment there, but I did know that there is a possibility for a privacy breach because I don't need someone to jump in my family call and start yelling, slurs at my family for me to be offended if someone was in my video call watching like a conversation with my partner or with my parents or something. And the fact that the stuff was open was really sort of kind of bonkers to me, and people who are public in the public eye and have a lot of exposure, we're making these mistakes. I actually wrote an article about Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but I grew up watching.
More of a Star Wars guy.
Star Wars guy. Okay, yeah. Well, I grew up watching The Next Generation, and there's and I love that show. Yeah, right. And there's a character on there, Commander Riker, and the human being, the actor, not the character. Jonathan Frakes was on a big Zoom call with a bunch of other actors from that show. And, took a photo of the computer screen and put it on Twitter. And everyone was like, oh, this is so cool. It's all these, these actors coming together. The whole cast of the show coming together. It was very cute and very adorable. But you could see the Zoom meeting ID in it. And you can plug that in and see that it's a recurring meeting set up by LeVar Burton, who's one of the actors. And you can see what time the meeting is. And so you say, okay, well, next Sunday I could jump in on this call.
Where is this again? Where is this again? Like, where is this information? Like the...
Right. Okay. So I guess, So a little more context. And this has changed. So I can explain how some of these things have changed. But this was sort of the initial setup, the powder keg that sort of blew up. When you were on a Zoom call, you're looking at your computer screen, if you're doing it on your computer, and there's a bunch of different, tiles or grid views. So it's like I can see, my cousin, my buddy, my dad, my whoever, and myself, right? So there's all these little different, so you can see all your friends at once. And then at the top of that, it says the meeting ID, and it is labeled meeting ID. So it's right at the top of the screen. So if anyone takes a photo of their screen or takes a screen grab and shares it on social media, and it's like, look at this great call I'm having. Or I'm having drinks with friends during the pandemic or whatever. We're all sheltered in place. That meeting ID is visible.
Right.
So, or at least it was. So that was that information. And people were, I mentioned something called Zoom bombing. I'm sure you want to get into this, but people were taking this information and abusing it, essentially.
Right. We'll get into that shortly. I want to actually stick with the the employers being able to track you with this, because
Sure.
the idea that you need to literally be active in that application seems preposterous. I mean, I can tell you right now that when there is, I'm assuming that's what how it tracked you. Like if you were doing something else in like your Chrome browser or whatever, it would assume you weren't working.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it alerts. I mean, I have the text in front of me. But yes, essentially, yeah, it's basically a way of, alerting your employer that you have in some way disengaged with, the activity,
Right.
basically.
I can tell you
Yeah.
right now that when there's a meeting, and it's not some short thing where everyone just really quickly, gets their thing out. If it's gonna be a long thing, I engage in other apps to do other work while I listen to
Yeah.
other people
Yeah.
speak. I think most people probably do that
It's
in a
totally-
long meeting or something.
It's totally fine. And it's like, oh, heaven forbid you like read the New York Times for a minute or two. But it's not even that. It's like maybe, a different work communications tool like Slack or like email or whatever, sends a message your way and you realize it's pressing. And then all of a sudden you pivot over to address that. And then because you're not being called. You think you're being a good worker, but then you're, good worker bee or whatever, but then your boss doesn't know that you're slacking someone. So they just get the little pop up on the screen that says, Matt stopped paying attention to me, and so it's a very weird sort of thing that a lot of people are expecting. Yeah.
Right. We had a little blip there, but I caught everything you said.
Yeah.
Skype, man, this is why you got to step up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Skype's got to step up and get their act together. I mean,
it's the bastion of technology, and I can't even get a good internet connection.
Right. But let's talk about also the other aspect of Zoom, that piece you wrote early on. What was the second part again? I wanted to bring something up, but then we got off track, and now it lost. Just remind me.
Well, they're what they do with your data.
Right.
So they're sending your data to third parties.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
Right. And you didn't even need to be, frankly, connected to, for example, your Facebook account, or even have any information connected to Zoom or Facebook, or even have a Facebook account to begin with. Correct me if I'm wrong. For some reason, Zoom was just sending all this data over to Facebook and other companies like that.
Yeah. So my understanding is, and I think it was, I believe it was Motherboard, Vice's Motherboard wrote a great piece about this, but my understanding is that the app, I think it was the iOS app specifically, was sending your information to Facebook, which is very bizarre. Yeah. So let's say you don't have a Facebook account at all, not even that you're not logged in. You don't even have a Facebook account. You download this app on your phone. It's a Zoom app, which is not owned by Facebook, right? They're separate companies. And yet it is sending your information to Facebook. Now, after there was an outcry in Zoom, changed, they said they pushed an update that changed that. So that is theoretically no longer happening. But of course, it makes you think, what else is going on? What other data is being shared? And if that only got changed after there was a public outcry, it's like, well,
Right. And I just want to point out that, there are plenty of things that I think were purposefully done that we're going to talk about that Zoom screwed up on. But then there's also something like that where, obviously, if you don't have a Facebook account connected, whatever data they were sending to Facebook probably wasn't enough for Facebook to build some sort of profile on you. Am I wrong about that? Am I wrong about that? Really?
I mean,
were they sending like full names and
I mean, it depends. Yeah, it depends on what they're sending, right? And I don't know offhand. I would need to pull it up. But like if they're sending a unique device ID or something to that effect, then Facebook can match that with information it has about you. So that company, Facebook, can draw a lot of inferences about people based on like a lot of things that, it's a super data hungry company. We all know this, right? And they have a sort of unimaginable amount of information and ways to draw inferences about who people are and the connections to other people.
Right. What I was trying to get at was no. I'm glad you. No. I'm glad you brought that up because it's important. I think there are things, I think malicious is the wrong word for it, but there are things that were done with the intent to do so. But I think this Facebook thing, it seems to me like an example of a company who just lazily threw shit together because it was, we're never going to deal with any problems with this because we're just business to, corporate heads talking to corporate heads. This issue will never come up because it will never be used in mass by ordinary people to talk with whoever. It was just like, to me, it seems like one of that specific thing seems like one of the issues with Zoom not being up to what people are using them for.
Right. Yeah, it's a product that was designed for one thing that is, or designed for one group of people rather, or one subset of people, and is being used by a totally different and much larger subset. And yeah, that's problematic.
Right.
It's shown itself to be problematic.
Right. So there's another piece you wrote that gets into Zoom bombing, and I want to let's move to that because I think this is something that people probably hear and they think, oh, it sounds harmless, like photo bombing, right? And yes, I'm sure there's a bunch of very funny Zoom bombing videos out there, and I could care less if like the heads of ExxonMobil had their their Zoom conference interrupted by a bunch of people shouting "Baba Booey" or whatever else. I would actually support that endeavor. But let's talk about that where Zoom bombing is actually a real problem. So first of all, what is Zoom bombing?
Right. Great question. Yeah. So essentially, we were talking about those meeting IDs earlier, right? Those are you can think of them again as like the phone number, the code that gets you access to the video meeting. And if you're having a chat with friends, or if you're having, an AA meeting, or you're having some other kind of meeting that typically would be in person, but because, of the coronavirus, people are not meeting in person, and you have this meeting and you want to get a bunch of people together, you need to send out this meeting ID to everyone, right? So everyone has this meeting ID, but just because everyone has it doesn't mean the meeting is open to the world, the entire world. So Zoom bombing is when, people who were not the intended recipients or the intended audience essentially crash a meeting, right? But instead of just hanging out and being creepy, and just kind of watching, they actively disrupt it. And again,
I actually don't know which is worse.
Yeah, well, they're both bad. They're bad. Yeah, they're bad in different ways, right? But the Baba Booey example you gave is again like kind of like funny, but I think a lot of people were contending with stuff that was maybe less funny. So like the AA meeting example I gave is a real example. And they're actually a real example of a meeting being held on Zoom and people Zoom bombing, crashing this meeting, and disrupting it. And there are ways to force a Zoom call for everyone on the call to see. Let's say I'm one of these bad actors, right? And I crash this meeting, and my intention is to essentially, troll it, because I think it's funny or whatever. I can force everyone to view my screen, right? So I can have like hardcore pornography playing. I can have like the Christchurch shooting video playing. And these are like real examples of like pretty awful things that people do. And, and some of these, first of all, that's all like incredibly disturbing, but then you're also talking about some of these groups are maybe people who are like their trauma groups or people dealing with violence, and they're trying to have like therapy sessions and things like this. So it's like there's some really sensitive and personal information and personal, meetings that are happening that are being bombed, Zoom bombed, right? And I've actually seen this happen. There's a great, actually, he's sort of a tangential colleague of ours over at PC Mag, because we're both owned by the same parent company. Michael Can, I forget, I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Kan. He did some great reporting where he actually was hanging out in these Discord groups of guys that were coordinating Zoom bombs, and he was watching them do this in real time. So they were getting these meeting IDs, planning it, and they were streaming this, right? And they'd go into these what were classrooms, and I saw this, right? I saw this happening, not in real time after the fact, but the elementary school classrooms where it's like a bunch of children, like literal children, and like a Spanish class, and these guys will get in and just yell like extreme profanity and just like really vulgar stuff. And in examples I didn't see, they're apparently playing pornography and things like that, which I think is can be pretty traumatic for obvious reasons, right, for the participants. Yeah.
Right. It's, and I think there was one I saw, I think even you might have wrote about it. A guy jumped into a Zoom where they were school kids, and he was just nude. He was naked.
Yeah. So quick clarification on that. That was a different video product. It wasn't Zoom.
Ah.
However, that product, and I forget what it was called, frankly, because it's a much smaller one, but it had the same problem, which was that anyone could get in these meetings with just the equivalent, that product's equivalent of the meeting ID, right? So this person was able to essentially guess the meeting ID, and yeah, it was a naked man, who was, I believe, started to be vulgar, but I believe he was, essentially touching himself, and it was a bunch of children who saw this. It's very obviously super traumatic and fucked up, pardon my language, and really upsetting.
Oh
And
no, you could do that on the show. You could.
yeah. That's super fucked up. And I think that those are the kind of problems that when you design this enterprise software, you don't think, hey, some pervert is going to expose himself to a bunch of school children. That's probably not. I'm sure that is not what anyone thought. Either this other company or at Zoom.
I gotta tell you, funny enough, if I was creating an enterprise product, I would know that there was a significant number of perverts that would be using it.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
like that's a guarantee. I mean,
but it is super. Yeah, it's super messed up. I guess that's just the internet. Like people will fuck with you in any way they can. But it doesn't. We shouldn't make it easy for them.
Right. I mean, it's something, and again, it's something that these big corporations that make software for the broad user base thought of in advance. Like, if you try to enter a Google Hangouts, you need to be connected to the Google account that specifically receives those Google Hangout invites. You can't just get the Google Hangout invite and go in. If you try to, actually, it says, oh, are you in the wrong account? Switch to the proper account. Or it says, should we send a message to the Hangout event organizer to see if you're allowed in? It doesn't just allow you to go in because you found the link somewhere.
Right. And Zoom has, to their credit, they have tried to rectify some of these mistakes, and they've pushed a bunch of updates. I think, the Zoom CEO said recently that they were sort of pausing all their new feature updates, and they were putting all their engineers on security stuff. And some of those were, they made passwords default. And by that, I mean, if you just have the meeting ID, that's not enough to get in. You now need a password. Now, again, that's not foolproof, but it's better. It's an additional step. They added something called waiting rooms. So like you were talking about with that Google link, now if you have that meeting ID and the password, you're in, the digital equivalent of a Zoom waiting room where the host still has to choose to let you in. They've pushed an update recently where they're taking the meeting ID again, that's that like access number, off the top of the screen, so that if you do take a screenshot or you do take a photo of your desk and share it out in the world, that it's not immediately visible to everyone. So they're trying. I think they're admitting that they screwed up. Yeah.
Right.
But when you have like hundreds of millions of people using their product, like a small screw up, it can have pretty big ramifications.
Right. And I think that's the crux of a lot of what's wrong with these tech companies. I mean, listen, if we were talking about a one-off, minor, or even a medium-sized issue with a company, listen, these companies are all made there's people behind these companies,
Sure.
and people make mistakes. I get that. But there's this whole ethos within the tech startup world, and Facebook is probably one of the biggest proponents of this ideology. I'm pretty sure they actually might have coined this phrase. Mark Zuckerberg himself, you just build it, and if something goes wrong, then you fix it. Then you just build fast and break it or whatever. I forget exactly what he said.
Yeah, move fast and break things.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now listen, again, there's certain things where if you're creating a application to have a Spotify DJ room with your buddies, you can break shit. Nothing terrible is going to happen if something goes wrong there. If you're putting together a little application that organizes people's web browser bookmarks, and you do something shitty there, it's not the end of the world.
The stakes are different.
Right, right. But can you imagine if in the real world you were a student sitting in a classroom and a naked masturbating man just walked into your classroom? That would be a huge issue.
There'd be hell to pay.
Right,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, as there should be.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, I made that point that Zoom is trying, they've made some security changes, but I will also say, that is after a cascade, of negative press. I was, they got caught in a lot of different ways. One of which I think is pretty particularly revealing. This speaks to the sort of, I think, arrogance of a lot of these companies. The Intercept did a great bit of reporting where they took a look at Zoom's encryption, right? And so Zoom was advertising its calls as end-to-end encrypted, which means essentially, right? Apple talks a lot about this. A lot of companies talk a lot about this. What it means is basically, if I'm talking to you via the product, via Zoom, right, then only you and I have access to this content. Basically, that's a simple way of, the short way of describing it, right? So it's kind of what you think of as like a gold standard for privacy. Right, we're simplifying things here a bit, but they said, "Hey, we're end-to-end encrypted," which is good, right? That's a good thing. Sounds great.
Like we were talking before, someone who's not so tech savvy probably has come across that word before, and they hear encryption. Yeah. Oh, that means secure. It's safe.
They correctly think that that's a good thing.
Right.
Right. But it turns out, this again was the Intercept's reporting. It turns out that they weren't actually doing that. They were using a form of encryption, but the way they had it set up was not end-to-end. And the way they had it set up was not inherently bad. I mean, it's less good, to be clear, than end-to-end encryption, but they were misrepresenting themselves. They were misrepresenting the security and privacy of their product to people explicitly, and only address that when they were called out on it. So that to me doesn't instill a lot of confidence. And I'm, maybe you'll want to talk about this a bit later, but, I try not to use Zoom, frankly. I use other products, because I do video conferencing too. I'm a human being, like I'm sheltering in place and trying to be responsible. I don't want to be responsible for other people's death. I'm trying to take this very seriously, but I'm starved for human connection, man. So I'm doing the video conferencing, but I don't use Zoom because I don't, for many of the reasons that we've discussed.
Right. I mean, I would love for Zoom to get their act together and become a legitimate. I also, just a full opinion here. There's no proof of the matter other than obviously they're dealing with security issues. I question their ability to take care of other things, sort of that Facebook and Google and YouTube and these other companies deal with, the idea of the app being used for malicious purposes up front, not someone jumping into a meeting and doing it, like literally like a meeting being for the purpose of malicious intent. I mean, it's hard to sort of, I guess, these are private meetings. They're supposed to be, at least. So it's harder to, I don't want them to be listening into people's meetings, but, these are big tech companies who are supposed to find solutions to these sort of things. And I also don't know how much they think of, other basic issues in terms of, basic social good and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they... social good for Zoom probably doesn't align with like their balance sheets directly, so they probably haven't considered it too extensively.
Right. I mean, this company's got to be making a ton now, though. I mean, they had to listen, because a video teleconferencing app, just to have that up and running, like it's probably one of the most server intense sort of operation you could run. Besides maybe something like YouTube where you're live streaming and then also saving all that shit on the server. Yeah. This has got to be like second only to that. So, I mean, it's got to be a money-making operation, or if not, a well-funded operation.
Yeah, I imagine, and I can't speak to the specifics of that because I don't know, but, I imagine they're doing quite well. Their server loads are probably huge. There's a spike in free users, right? But I don't feel bad for them. Let me put it that way. Their stock has gone way up. They're definitely the company of the moment. They are now a household name. To go from a relatively obscure video conferencing app to relatively obscure, right? There were enterprise clients using it, but to a household name in the span of 2 months is pretty remarkable.
I mean, the idea, like literally a worst case scenario for them is they run out of money, go under, and then get paid hundreds of millions of dollars from like Google or Microsoft buying them out. That's the worst case scenario. These guys are going to be rich through whether they are a success or whether they fail.
Yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, they've been around long enough. I'm sure they have an established business model. They're not going anywhere.
Right. So there's something. I guess the next thing we should talk about is let's get back to some of these bugs. Actually, I
Sure.
don't know if we've discussed any straight up bug yet. Maybe the Facebook one falls under that, but I'm not sure. But there was apparently a legitimate full on bug because there's obviously no application to this, where hackers, were able to use Zoom to steal people's Microsoft passwords, like their Windows passwords.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not super clear on how that exactly worked. Did you do some reporting on
That
that?
was not mine. No, that was I think Stan.
Oh, that's right. Our
Right.
colleague Stan in Europe. Yeah, I unfortunately don't know the specific details on that. It's almost like there's so much shit going on that I can't keep up with it,
We
which
have
is ridiculous, but it's true.
we have covered. I feel like you, me, and Stan, who is the another Mashable tech reporter, we
Yeah.
have covered separate Zoom stories within like the same like hour or two.
Yeah, and they are, to be clear, different stories. We're not re-reporting the same thing
Right.
multiple times. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's wild.
So I
Yeah.
I actually covered one where they were secretly mining LinkedIn data
Right.
and sharing it
Right.
with users. Now this one to me was extra interesting because basically LinkedIn has this extra service. I guess you have to pay for because LinkedIn is the business social networking site
Sure.
called the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and apparently it's a way for a sales team to sort of, I guess it's like a sort of LinkedIn hosted CMS type thing, where you could basically manage how you contact people if you're a sales rep for a company. And
Sure. Yeah.
what Zoom was doing was it connected with LinkedIn's Sales Navigator. So a user had to be both using Zoom and a Sales Navigator subscriber. And if you were in a Zoom chat with this person who was also subscribed to the LinkedIn product, Zoom would give that person your LinkedIn profile name, your employer, where you lived, all the Zoom profile information, and they did
Right.
this even if you weren't using your real name in Zoom. Now, one story I saw, I think it was the New York Times, when they were covering this, they said they had a reporter who was trying to speak to a source anonymously, and this person happened to be the source happened to have Sales Navigator, and Zoom told the source who the anonymous person was because it found their LinkedIn
Right.
information.
Right.
And it did not, to be clear here, it's not like Zoom said, by the way, we are letting the people you are in this chat with know your LinkedIn information, so you could, the spin there, I assume, would to sell this as a cool feature, so they can
Right.
connect to you on LinkedIn right away. Not even that, not even the spin on why this is there. They just did it without the consent of what it seems like any of the users.
Yeah, that's totally wild. And again, that comes back to when you have a product designed for one group of people being used by another group of people. But yeah, the fact that, you're not signed in via LinkedIn, you give Zoom a different name, and yet it's able to make that connection between you and your LinkedIn profile and then share that information. That as the example that you gave, that could potentially reveal an anonymous source if it's like a group Zoom call. There are real repercussions and ramifications when this type of thing is not fully thought through. It can be dangerous. To be blunt about it, like me speaking with someone about like a Zoom privacy issue is not the most like sort of dangerous reporting, but there are types of reporting that put real people's lives on the line and at risk. Yeah, and that's that's a nightmare. That is like a literal nightmare, like betrayed by your tech.
Now, speaking of the LinkedIn Zoom connection issue, we already talked about a Facebook one. We already talked about a LinkedIn one. There's one that you covered where I mean, I know these sort of things, these services do this feature, but for me personally, as someone who uses these services with the intent of 9 times out of 10 creating public content for
Right.
consumption, I turn this feature on because I want it on. I want this to record my meeting so I can share the interview or share the content or whatever I've done. But you found something really interesting, and this is where we got Facebook, we got LinkedIn. there is now a Zoom YouTube connection, and I mean, it's you could check this out yourself and be shocked at what you find.
Oh man, are you talking about the public videos that are
Yes,
accessible?
yes.
Yeah, so okay, so this is totally wild. And basically Zoom made it, this is not only on Zoom, but basically Zoom made it very easy for people who are not technically savvy to endanger their own privacy. So basically, if you so one of the features that Zoom offers is the ability to record a video meeting. And like you said, there's a lot of people who record meetings for public consumption, and they do it knowingly, and it's all good, right? Some cases, not so much. So what Zoom does is if you're a paid user, you can upload your Zoom meeting to the cloud, and Zoom secures it securely on their servers or the servers they rent or whatever. But you can also save it on your computer. And a lot of people and a lot of companies have their local recordings saved to their computer, saved to their computer network, uploaded to the cloud, their own personal cloud, right? So let's say it's a company and every Zoom meeting I have is uploaded to our server, right? Or I'm a professional running a small business and every meeting I have is uploaded to my personal cloud account, right? Well, a couple things happen here. A lot of those personal cloud accounts or personal services or whatever were not protected or not password protected in any meaningful way or in any way at all. And Zoom default saves every meeting with the same meeting or the same file name. And it's a specific file name that's unique enough that it's searchable. And why does that matter? Well, it means that if you search that file name on services like YouTube, or Vimeo or Google or, various other services, you basically find people that have, through some sort of misconfiguration or misunderstanding, and because Zoom does this with these, they're all named the same, every file, every video is the same name, they basically put these recordings on the internet accidentally. And there's a very clear distinction between the ones that are intentionally on the internet and the ones that are accidentally on the internet. So the person who intentionally puts it up is like, hey, what's up? I'm teaching a class on whatever. Like, this is the kind of service you'll get if you sign up for my class. Here's an example class, right? It's like a yoga class or something. It's like, okay, well, that's very obviously public and intentionally so, right? Then there's the other thing, which is real stuff that I've found, which is people's private recorded therapy sessions, like the most personal, private, intimate stuff, imaginable, short of, nudity and graphic sex, but I think in some ways that's way more personal, frankly. And this one is kind of like a 1-2 punch. Like it's Zoom did a setup that is bad, or maybe lends itself to being, lends itself to problems, and then people are sort of making this mistake. But if the way I look at it is, if many people are making the exact same mistake with your product, then, maybe there's a design issue, and yeah. So, I mean, it's just another thing. It's like, are these people set up to fail? I don't know. You can't put the blame on, a grandmother who's maybe not using the configuration tools exactly right. If there's something, if she's set up to fail in the process.
Right. I mean, there just has to be, more consideration in terms of what a regular internet user would find
Right.
to be simple or not simple. Like there's you just assume right away that everyone wants this shared on YouTube. Well, that's not the case.
Right.
I mean, which is actually weird because that actually goes against everything we've just discussed in terms of being a primarily enterprise based application. I mean,
Right.
that is a bizarre user experience choice on their end to have the default be. I mean, from my position, that would be wonderful that I would have not forgotten to save it to YouTube or have the
Sure.
event recorded. But I doubt the majority of people want that to be the default application of it.
Yeah, and especially especially people whose private meetings or whatever are posted online. I mean, I doubt those people even know that they're up there. Frankly, it's not like people maybe some people have caught it and removed it, but there's that stuff that's still up there. And it's a shame, frankly. It is something that other companies have you don't have that exact same problem, right? Because, some other companies, who makes other video chatting tools, I don't know whether they thought of that exact situation. I can't imagine they did, but they designed their product so that it wouldn't be so easy to accidentally post your personal therapy session on the internet.
Right, right. I mean, I see areas where this can be beneficial to you, me, my audience. For example, with everyone home, and Donald Trump or Joe Biden talking to their funders via Zoom, probably.
Sure, sure,
I'm
sure.
going to be checking for those file names.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very respectful of all those people who are accidentally posting their therapy sessions and not look at those. But if I see Joe Biden or Donald Trump's mug show up, I'm clicking that shit and downloading it ASAP.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But, and yeah, I mean, fuck those people. But, you don't want your grandmother, yeah, those are public individuals. But, your grandmother or your cousin or your pastor or whomever, you don't want those people sort of exposed to, sort of the same sort of
unless your pastor is one of those famous megachurch ones, and I also want to see that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be inclusive here, Yeah.
I want to see Joel Osteen's private Zoom conversation,
Sure.
see what that guy's saying.
The appointments on his private jet or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the wild thing to me, we were talking at the beginning of this conversation about, how did Zoom get here? Like, why is it Zoom? Why is Zoom now a verb? And I don't have an exact answer for that, but it is something I think about. And there are other services that don't have these issues. I mean, every service has its own, different sort of drawback or plus or minus or whatever, but there are other options, and it's wild. There's even people know what I do for, my friends and family know what I do for a living. And they know that I focus on this stuff, and I would never expect them to read everything I write. Then they would probably stop being my friends and family. But I try to suggest other options for stuff, and some of them listen and some of them don't. It's always fascinating to me. It's like there are other things we can do that are free, that have the same functionality but don't have the same problems. So I don't know. There are things out there. You don't have to stop video chatting.
How is that open source one that I saw you write about, Jitsi?
Yeah, Jitsi Meet. I actually really like it. It's I think the functionality is frankly great. It's JITSI, if people are wondering what we were just saying, is how it's spelled. It's an open source tool. I think it's been around for about 8 years. Don't quote me on that one, but I think that's about right. And it is also not end-to-end encrypted, but it doesn't claim to be, but it does encrypt calls. And it has a lot of the same functionality as Zoom, meaning you can do video chats. You can have like a tile view. You can share your screen. You can share YouTube videos. You can record and upload to a Dropbox.
And it works peer-to-peer, I assume, because it's open source, or do they have a...
I think I would need to look into technical specifications a bit more, but you can like call in on a phone also. So
okay.
I think they would run that through. That's maybe why it's not end-to-end, because they would have to run that through like a server that they're operating. But they don't collect your data in the same way that Zoom does. They don't share it with third parties in the same way that Zoom does. And the tool is great. Like, as long as you add a password to your call, to your meeting, which is not the default, which I'm always like, come on, make it the default, people.
Right.
But as long as you add a password to your call, it's great. I have conversations on that with friends all the time. Like if I'm doing a game night with some friends, or I'm having drinks with some friends or something like that, that's the service that I use. Now, I'm all about privacy, that's like something that I write about professionally, but it's also something that I very personally believe in. I think it's important. If I were to be having a call with friends, with family, normal stuff like that, I would recommend Jitsi Meet. I think it's great. I've written about it. My name's Jack Morse. You can Google that and the word Jitsi, and you'll see like a how-to article, on Mashable that I wrote, like how to use it. I think if you're having a call with, your NA counselor, or you're trying to have, cyber sex with your partner because you're estranged and you're in a long distance relationship, or if there's something, you're talking about your medical history with your doctor, there's like an extra layer of scrutiny that I think products should be subject to if you're using them for really sensitive matters like
Right.
that. And I would say that there are some other options that I would recommend for those more personal digital video chats. But yeah, Jitsy's great. I like it a
Right.
lot.
Right. And another reason I think to look at these other alternatives is that Zoom is now going to be in the eye of people who want to use it to do harm. They're gonna use there's like malicious actors are now going to focus on a service that's being used. I mean, they see all the issues. They see it's like imagine you knew of a bank that everyone started putting their money in, but the bank forgot how to properly set up locking the safe. I
Yeah, yeah,
mean, obviously, it would
yeah,
attract a lot of bank robbers.
yeah.
So
And that's totally right. Yeah. Hmm.
so even if Zoom gets it together in these upcoming months, it's still going to be in the eye of people looking to break it. And until then, it's going to be like anything goes. And one thing I've been covering actually is how malicious actors are taking advantage of Zoom's newfound popularity, the confusion around, oh, where do we find this site? Where do we get on Zoom? To basically try to phish people, hack people. There's been a lot of reports of Zoom domain names being registered in an attempt to fool people.
Right. Right. Of course.
I'm working
Yeah.
on a piece right now. I'm not worried about give you guys a little sneak peek on how, frankly, in my opinion, dumb it is that a service this big and huge is running off of a .us domain name. Uh, it is basically, it's practically begging grandma to type in the wrong thing.
Sure,
Uh,
Zoom.com or Zoom.net or Zoom.se or yeah, Zoom.me or yeah,
yes,
whatever.
exactly. And it's basically just asking for trouble because all you need to do is find out, find a good lookalike domain name, which again, not using a .com makes it even easier for malicious actors.
Right.
Find a good looking domain name, set up a site that even vaguely looks like it could be from the company. Find these public meeting addresses or where people are saying I'm using Zoom on Twitter or Facebook, which everyone who's using Zoom now is sharing they're using Zoom via
Right.
photos, screenshots, or whatever. And right there you have the method of doing it, the marks and targets, and from their social media information, you can find out exactly what you want to get out of them if there's something
Right.
specific. I mean, it's practically anything goes right now for people who want to use this stuff
Yeah.
to do harm.
And there is real potential for harm there. I think that's an important point. And there's like the general phishing and there's the spear phishing. So there's like I can set up a lookalike site pretty quickly. Again, you said with one of those other URLs, right? And then I say, oh, to log in, you just enter your Gmail, right? And then people are like, oh, okay, I can log in with Gmail. Great. And then I now have people's Gmail accounts. Well, what does that matter? A lot of people have their banking passwords, their phone
Right.
passwords, all that stuff set up to password reset. So if I get your Gmail, I can control your bank and I can take all your money. Whereas you were saying is even more specific. So you can see who's had Zoom meetings on social media. You can create essentially, fake meetings and target them specifically if it's people of interest with these fake Zoom accounts and steal their login credentials in a similar way. Yeah, it's wild.
Right. And to people.
I look forward to reading that story.
And here's a really interesting piece of information. It'll be in the story. It'll probably come out this week. Probably in a day or two, actually. I'm working on it right now. They own Zoom.com. I don't know if people in 2018 they got really lucky because if they didn't buy it less than a year ago, I'm sorry, just over a year ago, they bought it at the end of 2018. I guarantee you they would have had to pay a premium now. I mean, they already paid a premium when you hear how much they paid for it, but I mean,
Yeah.
that they paid $2 million for it in 2018.
Wow. Yeah.
They're not. They are forwarding it to their .us domain name.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
What it
Yeah.
what it is, and this is again the theme of this whole thing. I mean, again, there are certain things that I think were intentionally done and just bad ideas and everything, like lying about encryption or whatever.
Right.
But the theme is just constant fuck ups for not realizing what the what's going to happen in the future. And I'm going to assess that when you build this type of service, which is a fairly, it's not a, it's a fairly intricate thing what they've built here, and you built everything on one specific domain name. I bet it's real easy to be lazy about moving the whole system to a whole new domain name.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah, we'll see if they ever decide to do that.
And that would seem like the good time to get on top of that.
Yeah, potentially so.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Jack, is there anything else that you want to, any other major catastrophe from Zoom that you've already seen or have seen and are working on right now?
I would just say, to your point, about this not going away as a problematic thing is exactly right. It's the new kid on the Zoom is the new kid on the block. It's the biggest kid on the block and has the most users. And as we've seen, it is not exactly dialed in on security. And so people are going to be taking swings at it. And those people are, people trolling, more malicious or less malicious versions of that, people trying to steal information, right? And this is going to be an ongoing problem. It's not going to go away just if you stop seeing 10 Zoom articles a day, right, in your newsfeed or whatever, it doesn't mean that this is no longer a problem. Just keep that in mind. And I would just say that, if you and the people you want to speak with have access to iOS devices, like I'm not like one of those people who is like a Apple super freak or something. That's not who I am in any way, shape, or form. But FaceTime, you got to have an iOS device or a Mac OS is good for encryption calls. It's good for private calls. But I would recommend over that, not platform specific, something called Signal, Signal. It's you can use it on Android, you can use it on your iPhone, you can have it on a computer, and you can have true encrypted phone calls. They don't sell your data, they don't store a lot of your data.
Does Signal do video chat yet or no? Not they do.
They do,
okay.
with a caveat. See, I would
okay.
using it all the time were it not for the fact that you can't do video calls from their desktop app, which is so frustrating. You can do it from your mobile device, right? Which is great if you want to call one person and talk on your phone. That's great, whatever. But if you want to have a bunch of friends and you want to do it on your laptop, you can't do it on Signal. But I would just say, before when I made that reference about you're having your meeting with your therapist or you're trying to have some cyber sex with your partner who's living across the ocean, or you're trying to, talk to your doctor or whatever, those really intimate, those really private things that you don't want anyone else to see. I think Signal is your best bet, frankly. I would just keep that in mind. If you listen to all this and you think, well, why the hell would anyone use Zoom? It doesn't mean you don't need to ever video chat again. It just means you should be thoughtful about it.
Right, yeah. And in the same sense, if you have to use Zoom, do it for something where you don't, you're not sending any sort of, work happy hour where you're just shooting the shit and not saying anything, Obviously, make sure you're not bad-mouthing your bosses and stuff like that. But
that is exactly right. Yeah, you're right. It's not an all or nothing thing. It's like you should be aware of what you're getting into, and companies don't necessarily make it easy for you to know that. Like reading the privacy policy at Zoom is not a clear and easy process. It's not something that's simple to do. But just be aware of these things. And if you're using a work account, for Zoom, and you're using that work account to run personal hangouts, be aware that other people might have access to that information and know what you're doing. And just think about those things. If it's a work account, a work computer, you're probably not the only one who can see what you're doing on it. Right. So keep that in mind.
Right. I still can't get over the idea that you would. I mean, they did, but that you would sell the spying on your employees as a feature. It's just incredible.
So every company does that. It's wild. Right. It's totally buck wild, right. Man. But most people don't think about it. Even again, it's that we talked about this earlier. It's kind of like a no duh thing, but that's not a helpful or a helpful way of thinking about it. It's like, these companies they make their money because your boss gets some sort of use out of it, and that use may be micromanaging you.
Skype is telling us I think it's time to end the.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I give you a proper.
I like the ramble.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't. It's. Luckily, we work somewhere where it seems like we're safe. If we were to drop something in the old Zoom chat that we don't want getting out there, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thank you very much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. This stuff matters to me, and it matters, I think, to everybody now a lot.
Oh,
So I
definitely,
appreciate the
man.
opportunity to chat.
Jack Morse, tech reporter focusing on cybersecurity and privacy at Mashable. Thank you so much for joining me. And listen, everyone, go check out Jack's stuff because I mean, I got to get you on this show every now and then. This shouldn't have been the first time you've been on this show because Jack covers honestly some of the most, and this stuff is always fascinating to me. Some of the most offbeat security and privacy stuff
It's fun.
that I've ever like. You know, the Facebook, the Twitter, all that stuff is always really important to find out. But Jack somehow always finds the most offbeat issue. And I mean by offbeat, I mean something you would have never assumed, but still affects you. And Jack's so good at that. What's your Twitter account so people can check you out there and follow you?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. It's I appreciate that. It's J Morse, Morse, and then there's an underscore, which, that's because I had some random anonymous Twitter name a long time ago. And I was like, damn it, now I'm a reporter. Are more sort of public facing figure, so I got to make it my name. But J Morse is already taken, so it's J Morse underscore.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. You can't use be professional and use the Twitter name. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, random asshole.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jack. Thank you. Stay healthy and safe there on the West Coast. I will see you in Slack.
Absolutely.
Take
Watch
care.
what you say.
Right, Roch. Always got to be careful. Take care, man.
Bye.
All right, folks. Here we go. The old Skype shut off. Bloop, bloop. Let's go to the second half of the show. A lot to talk about. Fucking Bernie Sanders, man. Trying to wreck my shit once again. Last week, I schedule a podcast / live stream for Wednesday, not thinking anything of it. Bernie Sanders comes out early that day and says he's going to suspend his campaign. Shit. Of course people want to talk about Bernie then. I mean, I had a great interview. I had a great interview last week anyway with Dr. Wesley Cheek, the disaster researcher who lives in Japan. People were very interested in that. But I mean, Bernie tried to ruin it before it happened. Then, fast forward to this week, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try to fit an extra show in this week. So let me schedule this one for Monday. I have this show scheduled with Jack for I think close to a week in advance. And Bernie decides to come out today and endorse Joe Biden officially. And of course, everyone wants to talk about that. Once again, my guest backs me up and makes this show as good can be. So there's no regrets in having a non-Bernie Sanders episode. But Bernie Sanders tried to make shit difficult for me again. Bernie, man, what are you doing to me? I've been one of your strongest supporters, buddy. Don't wreck my shit, man. Come on. Not me, us. Aren't I part of that us? Folks, patreon.com/Matt Binder. That's how you can support this show. Every time we get a new patron, we lose a patron. It's like been this way seriously so we're just constantly, even though we're growing technically by having new members come in, there's someone who loses their job, which is totally understandable, obviously. I'm not complaining about you people not who this has happened to you not still giving me money. I'm just saying this is how the show is stuck. If you cannot financially support the show because of any reason whatsoever, especially if it's job loss via the coronavirus pandemic, please cancel that donation, that Patreon subscription, and do not give me what you cannot afford to do so. You can help the show by listening and spreading the word, which means more to me than anything. I had someone message me on Twitter saying how much they enjoyed that white supremacist coronavirus pandemic episode I did a few weeks ago with Devin Berghardt. And this person said, listen, this is one of the best shows I heard, or something like that, or I really enjoy, meaning best episodes of Doom. It's not best shows ever, I'm sure. And I really enjoyed it, and I made sure I had friends listen to it because it was that good, and I feel bad I couldn't I can't afford to do a Patreon right now. Honestly, spread the word. Because if you can't afford to do the Patreon, to become a patron subscriber, but you tell 10 people about it, and 2 of them like it and become a patron subscriber, I mean, obviously you see how that's a win-win-win for everybody. So patreon.com/MattBinder if you can afford to do so. If you cannot, you better be telling people about youtube.com/MattBinder, at MattBinder on Twitter, doomedpod.com just for the podcast version of the show, twitch.tv/MattBinder, anywhere you want to watch or consume the content this show gives you. That's the stuff you could push. Instagram.com/MattBinder. I don't really post on there, but if people started following me on there, I totally would. The main outlets, to be quite frank, is I view the doomedpod.com as a main outlet for people who just want to listen to the podcast. Along with that, youtube.com/MattBinder is the main live stream channel for the show. It also goes out over Periscope, which is connected to Twitter. And everyone knows I'm mostly on Twitter, at Matt Binder on Twitter. And then there's also the Facebook page, search Matt Binder on Facebook. And then Twitch, man, people are really trying to sell me on Twitch. And I did a Twitch stream with No Comment Chick on this past Friday. Go to twitch.tv/No Comment Chick to check out our conversation. And, Twitch seems really cool. And it seems like there is a growing leftist community on Twitch. But it's hard for someone like me who is still building this YouTube page, this YouTube channel. I'm not that big on YouTube. And to try to focus on another platform at this point is I think, difficult to do. So I'll continue streaming to both. All these platforms, but youtube.com/MattBinder is the main one to build right now. We get building on this, and I think we could branch out to other areas. So folks, I forgot to last week, but I'm not going to do that this week. The people who make this show possible are our wonderful Patreon subscribers, and they are Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Amanda H, Andrew C, Andrew H, Angela, RER, Baka, Ben, Benji, Bobby M, Brosnan, Champagne Kami, Chris F, Christine H, Cindy G, Colin R, Connor R, Cracker Barrel, CT, Cynthia J, D, Dan K, Dank Uger, Dave K, David Z, I should say, Daya, Doug H, Douglas V, Dragon Slayer, Eugene B, Fraz K, Free Hat, FTW, Greywind, Greg D, Grim, Hitesh, Igor D, Jack D, Jameson, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeremy M, JLS, John B, John S, Jonathan B, Joseph H, Joseph R, Joyce M, Justin S, Katie S, Kaushal, Lisa D, MC, Mariah, Mark S, Max W, me, Melissa M, Mitch V, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Dinks, NS, Nicole A, Namde Net, Null Style, Odef, Paul M, Penelope D, Qster, Rad Dad, Remy, Ryan, Scott R, Seth K, Sean H, Silicone Baby, Stephen R, Stephen S, Steve A, TM, Tamney G, Terrence R, Hypervisor, This Is Not Pizza, Tina M, Todd K, Tom M, Why That Tie Guy, Utopian, and Zoe G. All right, folks, see you in the second half of the show for live stream watchers, I should say, and Patreon subscribers. Other than that, stay tuned to @MattBinder on Twitter for when the next episodes are going to be. I'll be doing another episode later this week. Maybe even more than that. Stay tuned to see. I'm trying to do more under this whole pandemic situation. Everyone's home. Let's stream and have some good times together under the situation. Try to make, a hard and sometimes, a lot of times depressing time a bit easier to deal with. Hopefully I help do that sometimes. If I don't, Maybe I'm just making things worse. The show is called Doomed after all, and I do talk about some pretty shitty stuff sometimes. Sorry if that's the case. See you all next time on Doomed! Forgot to turn the volume up for a second. What's up, Patreon subscribers? How are you doing? Token Reform Libertarian asks, is this Patreon only now? Technically it is, but for the time being, in order to build this up, I let live streamers sit in for this. Eventually, once if I ever, have a decent number of Patreon subscribers, I am going to cut off the stream feed even for everyone except Patreon subscribers. For the time being, the second half of the show is for people who tune in live, and then also, obviously, Patreon subscribers. Eventually, it'll only be for Patreon subscribers. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention on the first half, but yesterday, I did a Easter Sunday movie night, and it was a last minute idea. I was home, bored. Of course, there was a home catastrophe a minute before, with the kids, a minute before I went live. But after that was dealt with, I was like, well, I already announced I was going to do it, so. But it was a lot of fun. I did a Easter movie night, and me and about 30 other people jumped in, and 30 other people was the high point, I think. Well, it was like 40 or 50, but then it was an average of 30. We're watching Night of the Living Dead. Because it's a public domain movie, people are able to watch the movie on my stream with me in the corner, giving some hopefully not annoying light commentary throughout. And some people actually told me it was the first time they saw the movie, which was great, I think. And I had a lot of fun, and I hope to do that some more in the future, maybe hopefully with more people watching. And possibly a guest or two or three to add commentary with me. It was a fun time. I had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, I'll try to, obviously, now that the test run worked out, I'll try to give a more of a heads up next time. Let's talk about... Oh, let's do Bernie. Let's do Bernie's endorsement. Let's talk about that. So, Bernie Sanders was always going to endorse Joe Biden. If you have a problem with Bernie Sanders endorsing Joe Biden, I get that. That's fine. I totally get that, obviously, and it's totally fine. Let me reiterate. But you shouldn't be surprised about it. And you could be disappointed in him doing it, but it shouldn't be like something that makes you think any differently about Bernie, being that if you supported Bernie, you knew he was going to do this if he lost. I mean, you can think whatever you want about him losing and the things that were done to make sure he did not win. But Bernie Sanders, like he did in 2016, always said he was going to endorse the Democratic nominee. And you should honestly, well, in my opinion, I respect the guy for always following through with what he says. It is something that is, you know, a very good attribute, excuse me. Um, I, I, I think Bernie is a commendable force in politics, and there's very few people like Bernie. And I would say there's no one at the level of Bernie in terms of national name recognition, and certainly at that high level of politics. A former presidential candidate, someone who's a household name figure. There's no one. He's truly a one of a kind. And you don't have to listen to him. You don't have to agree with him. But I don't think it should make you hate the guy or stop trusting him, because unless you decided to no longer support him when he promised this in 2016, and then again when he started this campaign, then I mean you just weren't listening, because that was what he said. That being said, there's going to be a lot of push for Bernie Sanders supporters to support Joe Biden. And you are going to hear from some of your favorite progressive, liberal, leftist talkers both things. You're going to hear them push for you to support Joe Biden, and they're going to hear you're going to hear from some to not support Joe Biden. And I am going to try my best on this show to do neither. I will give you my personal view on these things, like I always do. But I will not tell you you are a good person or a bad person for deciding to vote for the Democratic nominee or deciding to not vote for the Democratic nominee. I will not demean you for your choice in voting. I will tell you exactly how I am going to come to this decision in the coming months, whatever it may be. And I will tell you why, and I will make my own personal case for why I am doing so. The thought process that makes me fill in that bubble next to whoever's name I fill in. Obviously, it's not going to be Trump's. I will tell you, please don't vote for Donald Trump. That I will tell you up front. There's better options from that, period. Even if you're one of the people who say you are an accelerationist. Please. There are even better ways to do that, I think. But I don't get the idea to belittle people that you see all over Twitter right now. It kills me, honestly. It's like, well, you're working against your cause. Like, how you're dumb as rocks. How dumb do you have to be to tell people they are dumb or stupid or selfish or privileged if they decide not to vote for Joe Biden? Even if you think that, your strategy for convincing them otherwise is the dumbest possible strategy. Now, I haven't watched the whole Joe Biden endorsement yet from Bernie, but I will tell you, I was there for Bernie Sanders' DNC speech in 2016. I was physically there in Philadelphia in the room when he endorsed Hillary Clinton. And I saw so much shit from the anti-Bernie crowd about that speech. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I implore everyone, regardless of what you're going to do or whatever, or however you feel now, I implore you to take a minute and go back and listen to Bernie Sanders' endorsement of Hillary Clinton from 2016. He used a version of that speech throughout the entire general election campaign whenever he did a rally or an event for Hillary. And I will tell you, it is the most successful, in my view. It is one of the most brilliant speeches, and to me, the most successful endorsement speech I have ever heard from any sort of legitimate political figure of that caliber who has a true movement or a army of supporters behind them. It is a fantastic way to convince your supporters to vote for who was formerly your opponent, someone who your supporters probably immensely dislike. Please go back and watch this speech, no matter where you stand, just to get a sense of how dumb these people on Twitter are. And when I say these people on Twitter, I'm just not talking about people with 10 followers, with people with 100 followers, people with 10,000 followers even. I'm talking about legitimate democratic strategists, liberal and progressive talkers. It is stunning to see how dumb they are. Listen to that Bernie Sanders speech. The gist here is, and I'm not going to do it justice by breaking it down for you, but please listen to it. Bernie Sanders goes ahead and he starts the speech by talking about what his supporters accomplished with him. It is the bulk of the speech. It is the part of the speech that says, look at what you guys have done. You should be immensely proud of yourselves. Look at what we've built. Frankly, it is a speech that only Bernie Sanders can make because, as we've seen with other political campaigns, very few build anything after the campaign kicks the bucket and that's it. No more campaign. What he then pivots to, after making the case to his supporters about, look at what we've done. And there was a lot to be proud of. They literally changed the course of quite frankly, the political discourse for forever. There is truly an entire movement now. A strong movement, a sizable movement of people fighting for Medicare for all, criminal justice reform, tuition-free college, forgiveness of student loans, housing justice. There's a whole slew of things that are now politically possible because the discourse around it has changed. And then what Sanders does is he does something very, very obvious, I think, to most, but clearly is not. You pivot to, now all these things we've done, all these things that we have built together, this is how we make sure that stuff continues on in an electoral way. And he then goes through each one again after commending his supporters for getting us there on each one of these things. Again, criminal justice reform, Medicare for all, climate change. And he says, Hillary Clinton, here's where she is on this. And this is what we can do together. Again, whether you believe that Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, and I'm talking to you individually, the person watching this right now, will do these things, can be pushed on these things. That's a discussion to have. We can be, let's have that discussion. I'm with you. But I'm talking from just frankly a strategic point here. He makes this case brilliantly. For example, let's take climate change. Hillary Clinton, he said, she believes in the science and she will do this, this, and this. Now, obviously, these aren't 100% where we wanted to go, but she's on board 100% here. She'll meet us somewhere here, and we can do these things together, as opposed to Donald Trump, who doesn't even believe in the science. He's not demeaning them. He's not saying, you must support her. He is saying, this is where we continue this work electorally. And I hope you join me. He's not saying, fuck you if you don't. Because quite frankly, even if you, Democratic strategist, wants to say, fuck you if you don't join me, It is shockingly a really bad strategy to convince people to vote for your guy. I know, right? Crazy. Please watch that speech from Bernie Sanders. Whether you agree with him or not, it is the obvious, to me, way to ask your supporters to come along with you and get behind or at least vote for the Democratic nominee. So I think if you are a Bernie Sanders supporter, you should have known this was coming. I think you have to remember that Bernie Sanders is quite frankly the most powerful figure on the left, first of all. So you don't think he spent a lot of time deciding when and how to do this? I mean, you don't think he understands the pressure behind it and what he does, how it matters? I mean, I get that he is the compromise, and a lot of us wish there was even someone even further left than Bernie, and he just happens to be what we've got. But I mean, you gotta respect the guy for taking us there. For there is no, I mean, this, I can take you guys back to, the Obama era, when there was a defeated, deflated left. There were, little moments here and there where there were sparks or bursts of something that could be. But pre-2015, when Bernie announced, it was a depressing time for any sort of real legitimate leftist movement. I mean, Occupy was an incredibly inspiring event. But you have to understand that the main driving force of Occupy, and I've done shows where I've said that Occupy, you can see the connections and the direct actions and a lot of things that we see today in the modern leftist movement today. You can see the birth of it or the seed being planted in Occupy. But Occupy, the movement as it was, started in September. Bloomberg forces everyone out of that park in November. And Occupy, while it continued for months and years after in some fashion, again, not counting the people who spurred off from Occupy and created something better and helped create different movements or inspire different movements. The movement itself, I mean, that was it. It never regained the strength it did from when it was occupying that park in Lower Manhattan. So Bernie is a major reason why we are where we are. And you have to understand that he has to think of all this stuff. I mean, obviously, he's a senator. He's got to think of his power in the Senate, where that could be best used. The coalescing he needs to do on his bills and the coalitions he has to build. And then also you have to, and I think this is a major thing, there are countless people who are inspired by Bernie who are running for office. There are people who are currently elected officials who ran because of Bernie Sanders, were inspired by Bernie Sanders, are there and are frankly connected to the Bernie Sanders name. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. You have to understand that if Bernie Sanders, and there's going to be people who blame Bernie no matter what, that's an obvious. But if he didn't endorse, or he waited a long amount of time to endorse, and I think that last one is ridiculous. I think the general election never ever even starts until after the late summer, and even after usually, like it did in 2016. And people don't realize that Hillary pretty much solely focused on fundraisers until September of 2016. But that being said, the the how these people view this shit. Bernie doesn't want to drag down those people. He doesn't want the discourse to be Bernie is not anti-Trump. It's again, we can, you know me. I think this is ridiculous. There's no one more anti-Trump than Bernie Sanders because it's based on policy. But that belief is there. And as long as Trump is in office, there is a huge anti-Trump vote. And you don't want those people to take down who we've got. And I think this is something Bernie thinks of as well. You don't want Bernie Sanders not endorsing Joe Biden yet to hurt Rashida Tlaib, who was out there attacking Hillary Clinton for Bernie. I mean, you have to understand here, I think. And again, I want to stress, this is not me defending, saying you should support. This is me defending Bernie's actions. Explaining Bernie's actions is probably the better way to put it across. You do not want Bernie to hurt Rashida. She has a very legit primary contender. You do not want her support for Bernie to somehow in any way be those few percentage points that cause her to lose. Because the anti-Bernie contingent have some crazy, ridiculous understanding of politics and movement building and policy making and pushing, strategic pushing of candidates. It's something that clearly I would be surprised if it didn't weigh on him, to be quite frank. So that's my understanding of everything, and I hope you guys could understand his position as well. I mean, Bernie is a guy, if he feels like there's a strategic positive behind it, he'll do it. I mean, the guy called for primarying Barack Obama in 2011, 2012 because of Obama's insistence to come to a agreement with Republicans to strike a grand bargain that included cuts to Social Security. I mean, you can see when it comes to Bernie strategically weighing the pluses and minuses of doing something, he looks at it in a very obviously pragmatic way. Even when it's something that is seen to be radical or revolutionary. I mean, calling for the primarying of a popular sitting Democratic president is radical and revolutionary. But to Bernie Sanders at the time, it was something that had a net positive. And frankly, it was clear at the end of the day, there was a net positive to it. Even if it did hurt his campaign to, again, the idiots who don't understand politics, who just love Obama because it's a personality cult to some people. I mean, again, you can do what you want. On this show, there'll be no demeaning of people. We'll have discussions with never Biden people. We'll have discussions with people who think we should strategically vote for Biden. I will say this, though, no matter in which camp you are, do not admit you'll vote for Biden yet. Bernie had to, because he needed to strategically think through for himself. And for him being the name on the movement right now. But we, the masses, should not be saying we're voting for Biden, whether we plan to or not. Bernie endorses Biden, and that's in order to work to get the Bernie supporters to vote for them. Make those fuckers work. You make them work. And when I say fuckers, I mean all of them. All these politicians. Bernie as well. You make these people work for you. And I say this with love, Bernie. Because you have no obligation to support these guys yet. You have no obligation to agree with Bernie, even if you do. You have no obligation to say you're voting for Biden because of Bernie, or you're voting for Biden regardless. Do not do that if you want to see leftist policy at least being given some consideration for. You make them work for it. You let them know that you're not sure who you're going to vote for yet. I don't know. Maybe I will vote for Trump. Maybe. I don't know. You want these people to be there. You want their knees clattering, clanking against each other, going, "Oh man, I really don't want this election to come down to a percentage point because the left decided not to come out for me because I gave them no consideration." No. You make them give you everything, and you don't agree to vote for them. Frankly, for me, I won't agree to vote for anyone until I walk into the voting booth that day. No matter how long ago I've decided. If you decide you want to work for a campaign or whatever, that's different. I mean, I'm not, there's, for me, if you want my blood, sweat, and tears, if you want my labor, I mean, frankly, Bernie Sanders would be the only person who got that, to be honest with you. I'm much more strategic with my vote, obviously, than my free labor. And frankly, in this case, probably even paid labor. But yeah, that's my take. Wait, read the comments. What am I missing here? Who am I missing here? Who's unknown driller saying me read the comments? Is something going on in the chat? Wait, my dad just texted me saying YouTube and Facebook live down. Well, Facebook, it's just not too many people watching on there. But the YouTube feed is down? I'm not seeing that. But yeah, back to the Bernie thing. I don't think we're down. Everything's up for me. But back to the Bernie thing. Yeah, you don't show them your hand. I'm not a gambler and I know nothing about poker, but you got to have a poker face right now, and I think I'm using the terminology correct. Don't let them. I mean, listen, I voted for Hillary in 2016 after Bernie, obviously, voted for Bernie in the primary, but I voted for Hillary in 2016. I felt, for me personally, it was the strategic move to do, the right thing to do. And I got to tell you, it was a lot easier to vote for Hillary than it's going to be to vote for Biden. But I resigned to voting for Hillary much earlier than I let on. I think I shared on this show officially that I was voting for Hillary a couple of weeks before the general election. And on Twitter, I shared. I personally agree with the idea that voting is strategic. My version of strategy is different than your version of strategy. I don't think you vote based on what you would do in a if you were out there on the streets organizing or taking part in direct action. I view voting as different. What that means to you means something different to me. If you even view voting as strategic, I'll probably make my case via the show and via articles, not to convince anyone of anything otherwise, but to explain to people why I view things that way. And maybe if that changes your mind in one way or another, so be it. But I'm not going to demean anyone. I'm not going to force you to do shit. You do what you think you need to do. There's Don't listen to people who say how privileged you are or whatever. I mean, I think I was sort of on board with that, and I was in the Sam Cedar camp. I think even Sam probably has backed down from his line too. Like in 2012 with Romney versus Obama, I felt differently. I felt, it's obvious you vote for Obama over Romney. I think it's obvious you don't want Trump to win. He is, he's terrible. He is really bad. But I think the way that the Democratic Party has treated the left, and quite frankly, ordinary, everyday people, most importantly, is trash. And I think you have every right to feel how you feel. And you take as long as you need. Self-care, baby. I find it hilarious. Hilarious that Elizabeth Warren is the final holdout of the Democratic primaries when it comes to an endorsement. I hope every Bernie supporter starts to I hope the new online meme from the left is how the Warren stands are going to cost Biden the election, because their messiah, Elizabeth Warren, their savior, Saint Warren, hasn't endorsed Joe Biden yet. That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. We should get that going. I saw Matt from that's one of the best tweets that I saw today, if not the best tweet. Matt from Chapo tweeted, "I could never vote for someone who was endorsed by someone who was endorsed by Joe Rogan." And if that doesn't perfectly encapsulate, the situation, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else does. I mean, the people who you saw spew hatred, pure hatred about Bernie. Not, I'm not, I don't like Bernie because he's not where I am policy wise. I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate. I don't like Bernie's policies. Not those people. Oh, those people suck too, but not those people. The people who hated Bernie Sanders' guts and who he was and how they perceived him running his campaign. To see those people all of a sudden turn around like that, it's fucking gross. It's just, it makes me feel dirty. To think those people are it's just, and not myself because I didn't do anything wrong. I look at those people and I just feel like, imagine standing for nothing. Joe Biden could get my vote, but he's not going to escape my criticism for the next whatever, how many months it is, 6-7 months. Oh no, absolutely not. Even when in 2016, when I did decide to share I was going to vote for Hillary, I was criticizing every misstep and every wrong-headedness thing that campaign was putting out to the bitter end, because that's what you do. You do not let these guys get the whole idea of you don't criticize someone. That I'm definitely not on board with. And especially with Biden and what's coming out about him. And we'll talk more about that. Again, whatever I decide, when I decide it, I'm undecided right now. Whatever I decide when I decide it, it'll be strictly based on what I think is the best for everyday people and for the leftist movement. It's not because I don't think we should hurt the Democratic Party and Joe Biden's feelings when they're up against Trump. We have to really unite behind him and not criticize us. That you're definitely not getting from me. I'll tell you that much right now. There will be no patting on the head of Joe Biden or the Democratic Party from me. You will get the criticism to the bitter end. Biden and the Democratic Party have to earn it. And when they do, if they do, they're still not getting a pass when it comes to their screw-ups, their mess-ups, their fuck-ups, any sort of flip-flopping they do, any sort of backstabbing when it comes to concessions they do make. They don't get any free pass, I'll tell you that. Regardless of what you do when you walk into that booth or that vote by mail, which we may all end up doing for sure, come November. Why do people keep yelling at me to look at the YouTube? Is it because of I see a few MAGA trolls? Whatever. Let them be. I'm not gonna. Oh, I forgot to tell people about the super chat. Man, it's all right. Don't worry about it. You can always give a super chat to support the show if you're live watching. Yeah, whatever. Just the patrons, and I'm not asking for them to double dip. But if you're a live streamer who doesn't usually watch the show, I mean, who's not a. If you're live stream watching this, and you don't subscribe to the Patreon, consider dropping a super chat if you can, or if you'd like. I'll get to a few, just a few, chats tonight. My dad said that Instacart only gives 4.5% of the order. Jeez. That was our talk earlier from the free half of the show with Jack. Oh, Grim, when I was having some Skype troubles. Did Zoom DDoS Skype? Right. Who knows? Zoom is a cop, says Salami Mommy. I mean, frankly, Zoom is a cop. Some talk about my Dr. Pepper drinking on the chat. I love Dr. Pepper. And you know why? Read the little quote if you can. It says, "You deserve this. And quite frankly, Dr. Pepper, thank you. I do deserve this." Dr. Pepper. They should pay me. BA says, "Remember Edward Snowden?" Of course. "Every picture you send online is in FBI files," says BA. Token says, "I wonder if Zoom was purposely designed poorly, or if scalability is revealing the security defects." A little bit of both, I would say. Zoe says, "The latter, I guess. I think it's mostly oversight." I think it's purposeful oversight, because in some places they probably, like Mark Zuckerberg says, build fast and break stuff. You get what you can out there. Sometimes they knowingly put out an imperfect product to be the first to get to there. And they don't care so much about the issues that will come out of the poorly designed product until it affects them. Um, it's the that open source video conferencing app is Jitsi, Jitsi, I believe. People were asking about it in the chat. Sorry, freebies. If you don't know you have to look it up. I guess only the patrons find out. Renee says jitsi.org. Yep. Zoe says it's zoom.us. Right. Exactly. Zoe says we knew Bernie would support the Democratic nominee. What's so surprising, right? Renee says lead people out of the desert and leave them there. Right. Zoe says Matt's got the best guests. Oh, Renee was talking about Bernie, right? Yeah. Well. Zoe says Matt's got the best guests. Thank you, Zoe. Mariah says Wesley Cheek was dope. I like this guy too. Thank you. I try with the guests. I really do. Everyone is well thought out. That's why sometimes it's hard because you can't always get people when you want them. Sometimes you can't get people at all. You can't get a response from them. But I'm lucky that I've been pretty lucky about that. The issue is usually 9 times out of 10 I get through, and the issue is usually just trying to nail down a time. It's been easier actually to get certain people, I guess, during the pandemic. One bright spot. Oh, my aunt jumped in the Facebook stream before and said, "Hi, Matt." Hello, Aunt Camille. She's probably not in here anymore, but nice. It was nice to see you. I hope everything's going good with you in the pandemic. I hope to see you too soon. I miss my family. That's true. It's true. Renee says, grandkids update Papa Binder. Well, he hasn't seen the grandkids. We've done FaceTime chats every now and then. Mariah said, I was too scared to watch Night of the Living Dead. Salami Mommy says, movie night was fun. Thank you. Zoe says, I find it weird how people seem outraged about Bernie when it was clear from the start. Right. Amy says, I want you to drink my period blood. Salami says, I cannot bring myself to vote for either Biden or Trump. Well, Salami, I want you to know that I hope you know that a vote for Trump... Excuse me, I fucked it up. Let me try that again. I want you to know, Salami, that a vote for third party is a vote for Trump, because a vote for someone who isn't Joe Biden is a vote for Trump. And in that essence, a vote for someone who is not Trump is a vote for Joe Biden. So you voted for Joe Biden in the end. So vote for whoever you want. Such dumb pretzels people tie themselves, pretzel knots, whatever it is. People tie themselves into to try to belittle people like you who are quite open about their just Am I saying that people shouldn't try to reach out to you and tell you how they're going to vote in hopes that you maybe change your mind? I mean, if they feel compelled, they should strategically do that. To belittle and demean you is just so stupid. Lord Arion says, I will not be voting for Joe Biden. Again, if you were also not voting for Donald Trump, then... Because again, a vote for not Joe Biden apparently is a vote for Trump. But then I'm going to argue that a vote for not Trump is a vote for Joe Biden. Beats says Bernie is a con. No, but okay. Bernie's legit. And he's the compromise, too. Token says Bernie had a heart attack and still continued the fight. That's a dedicated con. Bernie is legit. A lot of critiques, a lot of criticism. You guys have heard them from me before. A lot of bad strategies, too, in the campaign that we've talked about, and we'll be talking about it more. But Bernie is legit, man. Everything he did, he did from a place of for the good of the movement and the left. And for frankly, the most vulnerable among us. And I will respect him forever for that. Even with all those caveats of disagreeing with him, being disappointed on certain things, certain campaign failures, strategy-wise, I will never not give it up for what Bernie has done for the left. He is the reason why we are where we are. It is the truth. It's not a weird cult of personality thing like you see with other politicians and their stands. Because I'm not a Bernie stan. Bernie would lose me in a second if he turned on his beliefs. And again, his beliefs. Because you support the man not because you think he's going to follow where you stand. You looked at where Bernie stands and you said, I can get on board with that, even if it's the compromise. So you can't act like he turned his back on you or disappointed you when he follows through with those beliefs. Simply put. Because those are the beliefs that convinced you to follow him in the primary race. Zoe says, well, this is an excellent example of the message I like to tell the disenfranchised lefty. Don't let right-wing pandering get to y'all, please. I think everyone here is fine. And usually the people who fall for that stuff are like the dumb left people. Upstate says Biden says he supports the spirit of Sanders' policies. He didn't say he supports them. Well, yeah, I know that. That's why I'm saying I don't support Biden and he's not getting my vote. Zoe says, I don't want to sell Biden, though, because he's trash, but I do want to sell harm reduction is the thing. You can do that, for sure, with the argument being voting strategically. But again, I would be cautious of how you sell that, as you put it, selling that. Because be conscientious about how you do it, too. Because there are very smart people with good reason not to support Joe Biden. Period. And it is your... no, it's not your job. If you feel like it's something you want to take up, the job of convincing people to vote for them is on the campaign and the candidate. But if you feel compelled to speak up, what you can do is explain how you came to where you are and why you are going to do what you are doing. That's how I would do it. I mean, even Bernie is very careful with this. And he's probably the one person who can talk to his supporters frankly and say, listen, this is why I think you should support this guy, period. And he's even really careful about that. I'm telling you, watch that Hillary Clinton endorsement from 2016. It is I hate to use this corny ass term, but it's a masterclass in a effective endorsement. And there is a reason something like 80 some odd % of Bernie Sanders supporters voted for Hillary in the general. And that is a high number. Less Hillary Clinton supporters supported Barack Obama in the general in 2008. Less than that. Cater says, major kudos and mad respect to Bernie. Nathaniel says, Bernie should refund all the campaign money he received. He's a con. Another right-wing troll in the chat. No problem. Welcome you all. No, he should not, obviously, because he's not a con. But one thing Bernie should absolutely not do, and I'm happy he didn't do it in 2016, he needs to continue to not do this. For good. He must not share his very powerful email list with the Joe Biden campaign, with the Democratic Party. That is honestly worth it's priceless. If it was to be sold like how you sell off some sort of tech company's data assets, it would quite frankly be worth billions. Do not, under any circumstances, give that to anybody. It is the single most powerful tool in funding every single left campaign that Bernie Sanders wants to. And this goes on from when Bernie sadly leaves us. Knock on wood, I hope it's not for many, 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 many years. But it is going to be the most powerful tool for the left for as long as emails and the internet are a thing. He must keep that guarded. It is the secret weapon of the left. Any leftist candidate who shows how legitimate they are and truly stands with the movement should be able to reap the benefits of that campaign, of that email list, and no one else. That is, because the second he uses that for something other than himself and the left, he will tank that list. Look at that list as a very valuable tech startup, being that we talked about tech. This show is tech startup themed. You will tank that company and it will be worthless. That company being the email list, and it'll be worthless if you share that data with anybody. I don't care how much Bernie supports Biden. There is nothing that should get that list from Bernie Sanders. Token says, vote to reduce harm and keep fighting. More direct action. People are primed for a general strike. Kevin says, the president is not the only thing you vote on. I will vote Joe Biden, but more importantly, I will vote down ballots. Zoe says, I feel like people getting mad at Bernie and canceling him or whatever misunderstand the role of Sanders in the broader struggle. Cater says Bernie opened our eyes to start our movement. Renee says forget Bernie and revolt. Unknown Driller says the squad should be booted from the Democratic Party. Antifa is evil and are fascists. Thank you, Unknown Driller. Another right-wing troll. Love to have you here. Truly. Join us more often. Beatsbox says, Matt, people like you on the far left are in a small minority and will stay like that. Your values are not widely respected. The Bernie Sanders campaign of 2016 and 2020 refute that. Even in failing to secure the nomination, it showed itself to be a force to reckon with. So he says, electoralism alone won't bring about the revolution, but ignoring it wholly won't do any good. I agree with that for the most part. But I also feel like there's a place for people who do not believe in electoral politics. Ekim, or Ekim, or I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name, but Bernie, only political figure that did any good in my life. There's a few more. Nathaniel says, vote for Trump. No, I won't be doing that. Salami Mommy, joking about the right-wing troll, says, my sister injected a communism and now she's in a coma. Zoe says, I don't know about putting on the effect of maybe voting for a fascist, to be honest. Well, that was me. That was me joking about how far you should go in terms of making them be worried about them not getting your vote. Obviously, I've said about 10 more times on this show that you should not vote for Donald Trump. The joke there was definitely do not even hint to them if you're considering voting for Biden until the left gets their concessions at the very least. Tony liking my leftover crack shirt. Thank you, Tony. Token says Hotep in the house. There's a Hotep guy. Medicare for all to save us all says absolutely to my Bernie stuff. I don't mind the trolls as long as they're not truly wrecking it for people. Like, you could ignore this stuff. I'm ignoring it. It seems pretty easy to still hold a conversation here. If there's ever a point where they're just spamming the chat on purpose so you can't have a conversation, that's when they'll get banned. But just for sharing their wrong opinions, but just for sharing it like you guys do, I'm not going to kick anyone out. But if they try to ruin the purpose of the chat, that's when I'll give them the boot. Medicare for all to save us all says make Biden earn it, right? The neolibs already said for each blue collar we lose, we get 2 white collar Suburbans. Well, that's a failing strategy. We've seen it already, right? Mariah says, I'm voting Bernie in Oregon. I don't give a fuck. Well, I'm voting for Bernie in New York when the primary comes around. No doubt about it. Bernie's getting my primary vote. 110%. That's not even a question. Everyone whose primary is still coming up, make sure you get in your mail-in ballots or whatever you need to do for, and whatever you need to do, I mean, whatever you need to do is safely vote. Don't go out and vote if your primary is coming up during the pandemic, obviously. Um, you should vote for Bernie Sanders still 110%. Please, I'm talking about the general before. There's no question who you should vote for in the upcoming primaries if you haven't already voted. MFers have to earn my vote, says Medicare for All to save us all. Right, yes. BA says, do you post a majority report Reddit before broadcasting? I should, and I'm still, and I have no reason to not be, being that I am the one who ran the Reddit for a while. I'm a moderator on it. Why am I not sharing it on Reddit? Thank you for the idea, BA. It seems pretty obvious, but I'm a terrible self-promoter. Everyone who watches the show knows that. Part of the reason why the show is not bigger, I assume, is because I'm a terrible self-promoter. That's part of the reason, obviously. I'm not saying I'd be some sort of big genius YouTube star if I just promoted it more. We'll be talking about the UPS stuff. I mean, the USPS stuff. We'll be talking about the Bernie campaign. And there's a lot we'll be talking about in the coming weeks and days and weeks. There's a lot to talk about. I do love Inca Cola, Renee. Inca Cola is the good stuff. But you know Inca Cola is owned by Coke. Renee says Joe Biden probably won't even remember who to vote for. Upstate Writer keeps posting this headline from July 2011. Bernie Sanders said it would be a good idea to primary President Obama. Yes, we've discussed this on the show many a times. And we were talking about it during my days at the Majority Report in 2011. We know. And it was a good idea for him to do this. Cater says, I 100% agree, Matt. Bernie is a superhero and proud to be part of his movement and hope one of his policies we can get named for him. I mean, when Medicare for All, let me just, again, underline I said when, I'm going to point that out. When Medicare for All comes to fruition, it should absolutely be 100% credit to Bernie. I mean, whether it happens, we should just get it to happen, obviously. Whether it happens, if we can't, if whatever asshole's in charge won't let that happen, we should still let it happen. But obviously, when someone who is in charge, who likes that idea, we should totally. Medicare for All should have Bernie's name on it no matter when it happens. He's the single-handedly the most important figure in that. There's no question about it. And I think history will treat Bernie Sanders extremely, extremely well. And he will be in that very small category of politicians who didn't become president yet are still household names. In the long run, obviously we all know Mitch McConnell, but in 200, 300 years, who the fuck's going to be talking about Mitch McConnell? I mean, maybe. But there are a number of other names who we talk about now who probably won't be remembered. I mean, Rand Paul, Louis Gohmert, those randos. I mean, even Democrats. I mean, Nancy Pelosi will probably be known in the long run, but, as of right now, someone like Kirsten Gillibrand and I mean, they all hold their place, but in terms of household name type of, who do we know? Who do we talk about that U.S. politicians on a regular basis throughout history who never became president? Ben Franklin? Alexander Hamilton? I mean, those are two really obvious ones off the top of my head. Um, Bernie will, without a doubt, be in that category because he has changed the entire playing field. My pop says Bernie using his campaign contributions to continue to pay for his campaign staff. Billionaire Bloomberg fighters campaign staff. Francis Zek says, I don't live in swing state, but I'm not going to judge people who do think Republicans are more bad, and I'm not going to bully survivors, immigrants, whatever, who don't vote Biden. Exactly. BA says, is North Carolina a swing state? Traditionally, yes. Possibly this time around, I think North Carolina still. I would say Florida, no longer a swing state. I would say Ohio, no longer a swing state, at least in a Trump election. I would say Wisconsin, Michigan, PA, North Carolina, Virginia. Maybe not so much Virginia anymore. That's probably Democrat now. Minnesota. I would say those are all Arizona, all swing states. I would say North Carolina probably lean Republican, though. Florida, definitely Republican. Ohio, definitely Republican. Arizona, likely lean Republican. It's basically going to come down, I think, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And I think we got some good news today with the Democrat winning on the Wisconsin Supreme Court over the incumbent Republican. The results just came in for that. That was a good sign. So it's possible Wisconsin is a win for Democrats. But if they don't win PA, it doesn't matter. PA is the must win. I think all the effort's going to be put into PA, pretty much. I think the 2016, look at the 2016 electoral map. I say you turn Michigan into possibly blue, and you turn Wisconsin into possibly blue. And PA could go either way. I mean, all three of those could go either way. The 2016 map is the 2020 map minus Michigan, Wisconsin, and PA, and those three can swing either way. Although a part of me still feels like Wisconsin is leaning Republican. But Michigan and PA are truly toss-ups to me. I can see them going either way. With Michigan possibly even leaning blue. So I guess PA is the true toss-up where I don't see it leaning anywhere. It's frankly smack dab in the middle. That will be the deciding state. I know there's people who think Biden will be a super weak candidate. I agree. But electoral college-wise, I think he will pull off a similar to Hillary. The placement of the voters are there for him. The question is, will the number of voters in certain states come out? BA says Bernie only came to the upper middle areas here. The poor working class people need to be talked to, which is difficult. I was threatened with stabbing by the country folks for saying I'm very liberal. Oof, well, Bernie people should have been out there for sure. BA Pro says Trump giving checks is resonating with the poor more than anything Biden is doing. I want to state this. yes, I think strategic from public relations standpoint, yes. But I don't want anyone to think that she's actually going left. I mean, this is just. But yes, I think the local needs to be focused on more. Yes, leftists need to get on the local level everywhere because we move up from there. And then once we hold all, once we have so many politicians that we can all, as a block, endorse a national level candidate, then that'll be extremely helpful. Token says, Matt, unrelated but curious if you are thinking if you are if you are thinking of speaking with Katie McHugh. I spoken with her via I've been in touch with her via email and phone. I'm not sure if we're gonna do it though. Simply because I'm not sure if she still wants to do interviews. But I would do it if she wants to do it. But I'm not gonna. I totally get if she doesn't. Yeah, she's the ex-all-writer who worked for Breitbart, and she's the one who leaked the Stephen Miller emails when she left. After she left. Oh, and like I said in the last episode, I've also made the call on Twitter and got a lot of responses. I'm going through them now and trying to figure out the scheduling. And I'm gonna once again, I'll do this on the free show next time, but again, just for patrons, giving them the first licks. If you already reached out to me, don't worry, I didn't miss your message. I want to talk to more of everybody. You don't need to be a reporter. You don't need to be, quote unquote, a somebody, as some people felt they needed to be in messages I received. People going, I'm just a nobody. No, you're not a nobody. If you have an opinion, especially during this situation where we're all feeling it with the pandemic, I want to have you on this show, and we'll do a number of group episodes with 2, 3, 4 people, and we'll just discuss, talk, whatever we feel like we need to get out there, and it'll be good episodes, I think. So reach out to me, Twitter DM, Patreon messaging, the Discord chat, the email, my email, matt@xmattx.com. I'll be probably switching to another email address soon, but it'll always be that too. For Doomed. All right, folks. Token says, interesting. Katie's story is fascinating. Yeah. I would love to have her on, and I've spoken with her. I'll reach back out. I didn't want to feel forced, because, listen, what she did certainly could put herself in danger. It's a very brave move what she did, regardless of what you think about her. I think, if you're going to be someone on the right who has that a change of heart, I think you doing something like that really proves you have a change of heart. So I respect what she did, truthfully. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, the $1,200 per individual is nothing, right? Also, where's my check? Right, Token, right. All right, folks. Gave you guys both freebies and patrons a lot. I've been going long on all these shows. Plus, I've been giving you extra shows, bonuses, the movie watching stuff. I know you guys are patrons, but I really thank you for your support. And if you continue supporting, I really appreciate if you do continue supporting. It really does help grow the show. Helps me continue to do this. I've bought much needed gear because of your support. So it is really important to me. Red Dust for the next movie night. I'll look into it, B. I've already put that on the list for sure. All right, guys. Thanks again. Be healthy. Be safe. Spread the word about the show. Reach out to me if you want to be on the show. Tell your favorite YouTubers and podcasters you want to see me on their show. Other than that, see you all next time on Doom.